All right, time for another edition of Bull in the Basement, and we are joined by three-time Olympian because, well, the Olympics are starting this week in Beijing, China, and it's got to get you pumped up, Steve.
Yeah, man, that it is.
Steve Mesler joins us, Buffalo native. How long you been in Calgary?
Almost exactly as long as I lived in Buffalo, actually. Now it's about 18 years. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. For people that don't know, and your name might not be familiar, you weren't a hockey player, you were a bobsledder, but
yeah,
that's okay.
I wasn't a Buffalo Bill or wasn't a Buffalo Sabre. Yeah.
Tell folks like where you grew up, where you went to school.
Yeah. Grew up right by Delaware Park. So grew up, Potomac in Delaware. My folks unfortunately sold that house a handful of years ago and did the whole Florida thing now. Went to school, went waterfront, went to city honors from, 7th grade onwards and graduated from there.
And we will pick up and piggyback on that, come up in a little bit with what you've been doing for years called the Classroom Champions. So we'll talk about that in a second. Awesome. I know you come back to Buffalo and do that occasionally. So let's ask the most important question. How does a kid from Buffalo get into bobsledding? I mean, listen, most kids, you're playing baseball or hockey or basketball or football, maybe golf or tennis, but bobsledding, how does that become a thing? How are you interested in it? And how did you get to the point where you got to actually do it, liked it, and got great at it?
I went from an even more creative route than going from Buffalo into bobsled, which could, theoretically make sense because there's snow and the cold and we're 6.5 hours from Lake Placid. But even more so, I went to University of Florida on a track scholarship after I graduated from City Honors, went to Florida and then went to bobsled after that. So I basically lost a bet to go back into the cold and the snow. No, we recruit big track athletes. The guys and girls you're going to see, in Beijing are big track athletes, fast football players. I was a big track athlete and long story short, got recruited to do bobsled with a little bit of a Dear John email as I was sitting on my couch at the end of my college career at Florida with 2 days out of surgery and my Tommy John surgery, elbow reconstruction from throwing the javelin and decathlon after a miserably terrible 4 years of decathlon at University of Florida. But luckily, at least I walk out of there with a degree and then found my way, like literally wrote an email, said, I'm this big, this strong, this fast. Can I do it? If I can, yes, awesome. If not, just let me know and you won't hear from me again. And that is how I started bobsledding.
That's interesting because let's face it, most of the famous Summer Olympic American heroes were decathletes, right? Over the years.
Yeah.
And you could call decathletes really, super athletes, right?
Yeah. Many of them are. I can't call myself a super athlete, but I can call many of the guys that I had to compete against super athletes.
You were doing, did you even do, was the steeplechase? Did you have to do the steeplechase? Was that part of that or no?
No, it was. All right. Okay. You ready?
Yeah,
you ready? All right. Everybody at home, you can count, you can do the things. So the day one was 100 long jump, shot put, high jump, 400. Day two was 110 high hurdles, discus, pole vault, javelin, 1500.
Man.
Yeah. It was awful. It was awful. You as if doing 5 events in a row one day wasn't bad enough. You had to, and finishing with the 400 meters, which anybody's done track, that's the thing that just makes your legs feel like you've got, concrete and you're about to go swim with the fishies. Then you have to wake up the next day and do it all over again.
Man. And so you have to be trained in all of those dynamic, unique sports. Obviously running is running, but hurdles are what they are.
Yeah.
And then was the hammer throw in there?
Nope. Hammer throw. Everybody could go back to your notes. You could hear that hammer throw wasn't, but you got discus. Yeah. It was like a random assortment of, it's the reason why the Olympic champion in decathlon is called the world's greatest athlete, whether you are Bruce or Caitlyn Jenner, or whether you are, Ashton Eaton, Jesse Owens, or our most recent Olympic champion, Ashton Eaton, or my childhood idol, the guy who inspired me to become a decathlete, which then led me to Florida, which then led me to bobsled, which then led me to my gold medal, Dan O'Brien.
Yeah.
These people are amazing athletes. Yeah.
Reebok Dan, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The Dan and Dan. It was the whole, a funny story, an awesome story about Dan. So, Dan was the Dan and Dave Reebok commercials from like 1992, the Barcelona Olympics, where if anybody can't remember, just YouTube Dan versus Dave Reebok, and you will see this great assortment. It really let everybody in the world know what decathletes were. And Dan didn't make the Olympics because he no-heighted in the pole vault at Olympic trials, which you can't do. And then, but what was cool for me was 4 months later, after he didn't get to go to the Olympics, he went and broke the world record in a place called Talence, France. And then I met him. Then I was in the stadium in 1996 in Atlanta with my family right before I went to University of Florida as like my high school graduation gift. Part of it was to go to the Olympics in Atlanta. And we watched Dan win his gold medal. Met him a couple of times here and there. Fast forward to 2010, which was my third Olympics, the Vancouver Olympics, where we wound up winning our gold medal. And what the athletes that, right now in Beijing or on the way to Beijing, a lot of the athletes are sitting in Los Angeles at, or Salt Lake City at what's called like accreditation. And they get like, they get their, well, accreditation happens when they get to Beijing, but it's either holding camp or processing and they get all their gear. Well, in Vancouver, we fly into a hotel on a Monday morning before our opening ceremony. So it would have been, the Monday before opening ceremonies. We get all of our gear. And then the Tuesday morning, we were going to head off to the Olympic Village. And they do a little shtick, a little song and dance for us. And as we're sitting there at the breakfast, there was going to be a video from, President Obama and yada, yada. And I get this punch on my shoulder. And who is it but Dan O'Brien?
Come on.
My childhood idol. The reason I'm sitting where I'm sitting. And then Dan gives us his pep talk. And what's his pep talk? It was the 1980 Miracle on Ice hockey game that caused him to want to be an Olympian. And his entire kind of spiel was, you never know what kids are out there watching you that are going to cause to want to go be an Olympian. And meanwhile, here's the guy who caused me to want to be an Olympian. And that's like my circle of life kind of Olympic story.
Yeah, that's phenomenal, man. That is phenomenal. Okay, so you get the call. You're like, hey, come be a bobsledder, right? You're obviously a power guy. Well, your whole body's powerful, but
there was a time for those of you watching on video, there's a time.
But the power in I could be way off of this. I've never done it. The power in bobsledding is in your probably your legs mostly, right?
Yep. Correct.
So
yeah, you're centaurs. To give a shout out to my City Honors kids out there, you're a centaur. You are you're a horse,
right?
Like you were squatting and power cleans and hurdle hops and bounding. And then up top, you'll see these guys that look pretty big, but they shouldn't be, because you have to get in there and be aerodynamic, and you're not bench pressing the sled. Like your arms are kind of locked in place as you push. And it's really just your hips and your legs that are really doing the work.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. And this is not going to be very nice. And listen, I am not a guy that's in shape at all, but I think it was Holcomb on your four-man.
Holcomb, you stand up a little bit for me, right. Rich. I mean, let's see. You could be a body double for Steve Holcomb in his prime. Okay. Well, and I say this, Olympic champion, just take it as the Olympic champion. All right. And I say this in all jest of my former teammate who's not with us anymore. But I can, because he's my former teammate and, a brother in arms. And yeah, Holcomb was an interesting body type, but he was a power man. He was a powerhouse.
It's funny. You see
and a hell of a driver.
Yeah. You see, I was watching, the Rams 49ers game last night. Yeah. They have a nose tackle who, if you saw him, you'd be like, oh, big guy. He's like a bouncer at a bar or something. Right. But man, was that guy powerful. He had a big, giant gut. Like, looks like he's not going to be athletic at all. And then he surprises the hell out of you because he is, which I'm sure that's what Steve Holcomb was. So let's talk a little bit about, so you mentioned he was the driver. What was your part of the bobsled?
I was a push athlete. So my job, sorry, my microphone seems to be connecting here. My job as a push athlete. So I was a 3-man. So I think the best person that we ever talked to that like encapsulated this the best is we did the Colbert Report back in the day, back when Stephen Colbert had his other show, and he labeled us as airbags. So I was in essence an airbag. I was a 3-man, which meant that I pushed, and my job was to accelerate that thing. And I got in as quickly and as smoothly as possible. And then I was a lot more nuance to it, but in essence, along for the ride.
So let's return a little bit to, you get the call, you say, okay, I'm going to do it. So obviously I'm assuming that you just mentioned some of the training and some of the work you have to go through to get to your level to win a gold medal in the Olympics. But listen, pole vault, I hate heights. I'd be scared to death to do a pole vault. How frightening is it to get in that bobsled the first time on that track? I mean, you're going what, 80 miles an hour, somewhere in that neighborhood?
My first track that I took a trip down was Park City, Utah, and you hit like 88 miles an hour. Yeah, and it is. And,
I mean, is it an amusement park ride, or
it's terrifying? No, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. It is. I remember, just like anything else, right? Like the veterans try to spook the rookies a little bit and scare you a little bit. And, I can remember I live in Calgary now, and there's an ice house here. And we used to train. The ice house just kind of goes, you push and you get in the sled, and then it swoops back up and it slows you down. So you can just practice or start over and over. I remember getting to Park City, and that part looked familiar. And then all of a sudden, though, it didn't swoop back up. It just kind of took a left-hand turn and disappeared. And the guys would be like, oh, starting to mess with you and tell you how scary it's going to be, that you had, and really, literally your first couple of trips down, your job is just count the corners so you remember where to pull the brakes, because you only pull the brakes when you cross the finish line.
Right.
What I didn't quite realize was that it's impossible to count the corners when you first start going down, because you go through like curve 1, 2, and 3, nice and slow. You get in the sled, and all of a sudden you're going 40 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour. But in Park City, Utah, and same thing here in Calgary, actually, as you hit curve 4, the sled the turn is this big, huge left dropping turn. And it probably drops a good 20 or 30 yards. Plus then the curve itself is a good 100, maybe 60 or 70, 80 yards. And it feels like you're in the sled and your head is down and the driver's in front of you and your head is down. And all you're doing is looking at like your feet in essence. And it feels like a stick of dynamite went off. And it also feels like something's gone terribly wrong. Like you're in there going, something's wrong. Like, we're going to die. This is not how it could possibly be. It can't possibly feel like this. Something is clearly wrong with the sled. And by the time you've processed where the dynamite come from, we're going to die because something's wrong, you've stopped counting. And all of a sudden you're probably on curve 7, 8, or 9. And then the next thing you know, you're getting the G forces are pulling your guts out of your body as you bent over. So the G forces are literally, when you see a sled in Beijing, you'll see these sleds up on the wall. Clearly it's defying physics, because these things weigh hundreds and hundreds of pounds. A 4-man sled with the guys in it weighs 1,400 pounds, and it's up on the wall 10 feet up. So that's clearly the G forces holding you up there, 5 Gs. And those 5 Gs are trying to push everything in that direction, including your organs. So you can feel everything getting sucked to the bottom of the sled. And then all of a sudden you get an elbow to the back of your head from the driver yelling brakes. And that's your first time down. And I've seen guys, I've literally seen guys get out of the sled very comfortably, take their helmets off, walk off the finish dock, walk straight into their rental car, and drive to the hotel, pack up their stuff and leave. And we never saw them again. And then there's the stupid ones like me who say, oh, that wasn't so bad. Can I try that again? And so 10 years later.
Have you done anything remarkably close to that in like a roller coaster or a race car or anything?
I mean, the like a wooden roller coaster that also goes upside down and all those things is maybe similar, but not really, because you're still sitting up. And to absorb G forces when you're sitting up is a whole different story than sitting down. And you're not hitting 5 Gs for lengthy periods of time. I took an F-16 ride after we won a gold medal. I would say an F-16 ride times a wooden roller coaster. It's like the Viper. Remember the Viper at Darien Lake?
Oh my God,
or whatever. What is it called now?
Yeah. I think it's still
whatever
there.
it's called.
Superman is there now. That's like
Superman. I did Superman as well. I just remember the Viper times whatever the wooden roller coaster was that they built in the 90s.
Yeah.
Times an F-16 ride is like a bobsled. So for anybody who's tried all 3 of those things, you know what I'm talking about.
That's crazy.
But you can also go to Lake Placid, and for a couple $100, which is not inexpensive, but I also tell people, like, look, it's worth it, because it's a story you get to tell for the rest of your life. So when it comes to like dollars per story, I know folks who have taken a bobsled ride 10 years ago, and they're probably down to 25 cents per story because they tell the story so often.
Right. I've always wanted to do it. I've been to Lake Placid a ton of times and I never have, either because I'm chicken or whatever, we run out of time, whatever, doesn't matter. Steve, 3 Olympics, 02, 06, 10, gold in Vancouver in 10, obviously. So like, take me through some of your fondest memories. Like that, let's get away from your actual individual sport. Opening ceremonies, meeting other athletes, being in the Olympic Village, all of that,
Yep.
Tell me some of the Olympic memories that you have from all three ones that you were at.
I think, so I was in Salt Lake City in 2002, Torino, Italy in 2006, and Vancouver, Canada in 2010. And I'm pretty jealous of the folks going to Beijing right now, only because they're going to have a totally different experience than any of us have ever had, which I think is neat. Like, I'm all about experiences in life. And, Salt Lake City was hard to beat. My first Olympics, I made the team because a guy tested positive, a guy who wound up becoming one of my very best friends and teammates and roommates, who then 2 years ago this spring had committed suicide. And like the life cycle of these, in bobsled, you have many guys who have done that, and it's a problem in our sport. But in Salt Lake City, I was sitting in the Olympic, in the USOC Olympic Committee's hotel the night before opening ceremonies, and I get the phone call that his protest didn't go through. So I got named to the team, which was this really weird feeling of having somebody who I knew, he wasn't a friend yet, but who I knew, who more than likely it was a contaminated substance. Back then there was a big problem. But I made the Olympic team, and there was this kind of double-edged sword. And I'll never forget opening ceremonies back when George, W came and spoke to us. It was the first time the country breathed in 5 months, because it was 5 months post 9/11. September 11th happened.
That's right.
And then February 8th, I believe, was opening ceremonies. So less than 5 months later is that. And it was the first time the country breathed. And I'll never forget walking in at opening ceremonies from the holding arena, walking down this thing, and the home country goes last, and there's snipers, the silhouettes of the snipers up on the buildings still resonate in my brain. And you walk through the bowels of the stadium, and as you come out, and the American flag is out in front of you, and the whole stadium just exploded with, and again, it was probably the first time in 5 months that Americans were given the permission to cheer. And that was a really neat and special thing. I get goosebumps actually just talking about it and telling it right now, to be behind that. My one favorite moment from the Olympic Village was it's one of the only Olympics I was at that had one village. So all the other villages, you have a central village in the city, and then you have these mountain clusters. And Torino in 2006 and Whistler had the same things. But in Salt Lake, everybody was in the city because everything was so close. Salt Lake is just an incredible place to host an Olympics. And they're trying to host another one in 2030 or 2034. And I can remember I was late for the shuttle, running out of the cafeteria after breakfast, and head down running, slammed into somebody, knocked them over. It was Brett Hull.
Come on.
I ran over Brett Hull. And I was like, dude, yeah, right.
On behalf of Sabres fans, thank you.
I was like, dude, I'm sorry, but I still got to go. And the next morning, Hull and Chelios ate breakfast every day together. And I actually went over the next morning and the next day had apologized and had breakfast with the guys. Chelios wound up coming out. What was it, 0405 when the lockout happened? The NHL lockout happened, something later on there. Chelios actually came out for bobsled with the Greeks. So I'm, get to spend some time with him in Lake Placid. So that was Salt Lake. I think Torino, the food was just awful. The Italians were so ashamed of themselves because Italy is food. And the Sestriere village, which is up in the ski town outside of Torino. I just remember how awful the food was. And we also got our butts kicked there. We were the favorites. We were USA 1. It wasn't what color, if we were going to win a medal, it was simply what color medal we were going to get. And we got 7th. So my entire Olympic experience was kind of just sullied with that. I remember going in there, you're a rock star. You are on NBC. You are getting interviewed by anybody and everything. And I remember after the race was done, not one person wanted to interview me except for Bucky Gleason.
There you go.
And Bucky, if you're out there listening, man, Bucky knows he is still to this day my favorite sports reporter. And Bucky wrote probably the second best article I've ever read about myself after those games. And the best article was the one he wrote after the 2010 win, when he did what I had always wanted to do, which was, if I ever won, I wanted all of Buffalo to feel like they won. And Bucky wrote about that. But in 2006, Bucky wrote this heartbreaking I just like poured my heart out to him. He texted me the next day. He was like, dude, I'm sorry if it, was a little too strong. I was like, look, I was interviewing with you in the media mix zone of the Olympic Games. I realized that everything I said could be printed. And I was just poured my heart out to him, and he wrote it, which I really respected. And then in Vancouver, I think there's a whole bunch of things. I remember playing rock, Guitar Hero in between the nights of our Olympic win. So bobsled's 2 days of racing, and it's 4 heats cumulative. You don't get to throw one heat out. But you get to the village, get back to the village, you get your work done. We have to sand runners, polish the steels, the bottom of the sled, the blades.
Wait, you don't have roadies?
I mean, we do for the big stuff, but like, I'll tell you what, you're talking about, and I'm holding my thumb up now for everybody who's listening. The radius of a runner is like a thumb, which means it's not like a sharp, like a knife, like a blade of a hockey skate. It's a dull, thumb radius. But you have to sand these things to get them down to be polished, like perfectly, all the way down from like 80 blue grit sandpaper, super rough, all the way down the diamond paste. And the reason is because you have 1,400 pounds getting smushed with 5Gs. And if you have one tiny scratch, that thing causes drag, and drag costs you hundreds, and hundreds make you go from gold medal to 10th place. So you are going to spend every single time. So, and no one wants it as bad as you. So a roadie could not be possibly capable of sanding that thing as hard as you can.
That's
so
great.
You finish sanding. And I remember going and we went and played Guitar Hero in between nights. And that was like by far my fondest memories, like sitting there with my teammate. I'm on guitar and lyrics, and he's on drums, Kurt Tomasevich, and that's our village experiences.
Okay, so odd question, but not. I'm sure you've been asked this, because obviously there's stories. I mean, does everybody kind of go into the Olympic Village and does a code form where it's like what happens in the Olympic Village stays in the Olympic Village? You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah. I wish I had better stories for this. You are not the first person to ask me this, but we compete at the end. So for me, the village was simply just another hotel that I stayed at until I raced.
Yep.
And, my first Olympics, I was an alternate, so I didn't get to race. So I was disappointed. My second Olympics, I was just pissed. I went straight to the bar afterwards. Don't remember much after that. And my third Olympics, we didn't really sleep, because you're just, the first 36 hours after you win a medal as an American, you don't control your life. You go from this function to this function. It's very, very choreographed, and it's a blast. Don't get me wrong. It is unlike any experience that I've ever, been able to experience in that kind of way. So personally, I can't say, but I do have guys. There's in my gym downstairs, I have an Olympic rings flag that I took off the wall from the Olympic Village in 2006, where I was really, really pissed. I was like, I'm taking this home. I feel like it owes me something. This place owes me some kind of joy. And then I had all my friends and everybody sign it at closing ceremonies, or on the bus and at the, on the thing, and like Germans and Americans. And this one guy, Christian, I'm not going to mention his last name. He was an athlete who did winter sports. He would, on the way out of we had to walk out of the village, because Americans have to go, and I can only imagine what those protocols are like. I have a good idea, but the protocols for security for Americans at the Olympics are really different. Vancouver was my first Olympics where we actually had American flags on the buildings. They just don't have American flags on buildings. It's too much of a target. And in Torino, Italy, we weren't allowed to take the regular shuttle. So the regular shuttle picked up in the village. The athletes would get on it. In Torino, Italy, up in Sestriere, we had to actually walk just outside the village, and the Americans had the hotel right next to the village. And we had to walk over there. We got into 2 police vans, and 2 FBI agents came into the vans with us. And then 2 police cars got behind us and in front of us, and dudes sat out on the passenger side with an Uzi. And that's how we got to the track every day.
Wow.
But where I'm going with this is, one of the guys who shall remain unnamed.
Well, we know his first name, but go ahead.
We know his first name. He would we would be heading to the track at 8 a.m. He'd be coming home, because he competed at the beginning of the games. He'd be coming home. He would come with us. He'd run into us every other day. And then he would walk out with us just to tell us the stories of the night, because we knew we had to live through him. And he'd be out with, this women's hockey team, or this ski group, and all these things. And we actually had to live through him. So I do know people had a lot of fun. I do know that they brought that fun back to the Olympic Village with them sometimes. In retrospect, I'm both disappointed I didn't get those things, but also ultimately the cool thing it was about being bobsled that I learned in 2010 when we won our medal is we are the last American gold medal, which meant that we were the last thing Americans remembered. So as jealous as I was of my friends, one of my best friends, Shannon Barkey, who's a skier, mogul skier, she medaled and she was the first American medal in Salt Lake City. By the time I went to a party with her at the end of the Olympics, she was walking in. It was like a night of the Roxbury for her. She was just, seeing everybody she knew. But on the flip side of that, when we won in Vancouver, we were on the cover of Sports Illustrated. We did the top 10 on Letterman because we were the final thing that like kind of stayed in Americans' memory. And it was the best games the Americans had ever had. We won the medal count in the Winter Games for the first time in generations. And we still haven't won it since. We set a record for, Olympic total medals. And that was a really neat kind of trade-off.
For sure. So I was fortunate because about, gosh, it was right. I think right when you came back from the 2010 Olympics with the medal, you were in Buffalo and you came when I was doing radio, you came to the studio and I texted you the picture of you and I with the medal. And that was an awesome moment. One that most people don't get to get. So I held the medal. I think I put it out around my neck, which is probably sacrilegious, whatever. But that means I'll never win a gold medal, which is fine because I would never win one anyway.
You sacrificed it. Yeah, it's okay.
Right. Though. So where is that today?
That is, you see that little red figurine back there?
I do.
That is Stephen Colbert. That is a Stephen Colbert bust from went and saw him in New York. Right behind him there is it's the little case that the medal sits in.
Awesome.
Yeah, I don't display it. That's not this is my office. We're in my office right now for those who are looking. That's why I have all the obnoxious Olympic stuff behind me because my wife, I don't want to put it in the living room and everywhere, and my wife wouldn't let me.
Right.
So this is kind of like, my office is like my man cave of all of my things that my parents framed for me back in the day, including right back here is the key to the city of Buffalo in case anybody needs to, rob City Hall. There you go.
Well, we're still looking for TOs. We don't think he ever returned it.
Really? Oh man, that's a shame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's pretty remarkable, man. Everything, all the stories are great. So all of that, so Olympians kind of go off, they finish, they retire, they get out, and they kind of do their thing. You have gone on to do something remarkably wonderful, and I want you to talk about it, called Classroom Champions. So talk a little bit about you've been doing it since I talked to you 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Or 10 years ago, whatever it was. Talk a little bit about what that is and how people can be a part of it, even right here back home in Buffalo for you.
Yeah, no, thanks. We started Classroom Champions back when I was still competing. It was in essence, I would do what athletes and, celebrities and business people do. Like I would go into schools, I'd give a talk, I'd leave, I'd never see those kids again and be like, if one or two kids listened, it's worth my time. And that just didn't do it. And my sister, she has her PhD in education. I had been a teacher. Our parents were teachers. My mom taught it at McKinley and in Kensington, and my dad taught out at BOCES out at East Aurora. And we wanted to do something with what was going to be my last year of competing. And we wanted to show kids the journey. We wanted them to, we wanted to do something that when we were 10 years old, we would have thought was really cool, which was meet an Olympian, spend time with an Olympian. The technology was just emerging that you could exchange videos back and forth with kids, and you could do Skypes. And I Skyped with kids from 9 different cities across, North America, including, an old City Honors, graduate classmate of mine who was teaching in Jamestown. And really what Classroom Champions has grown into over the last decade is an international nonprofit that supports schools in the social and emotional development of kids. And we have programs. We partner with the Buffalo Bills. Thank you to the Buffalo Bills Foundation and to Delaware North and the National Grid who sponsor it. And most importantly, to Tyler, I always get his last name wrong. Matakevich. Yeah. Tyler and Reed Ferguson and Deion Dawkins have been mentors with Classroom Champions for years, and they mentor kids across Western New York through Classroom Champions. We work with Team USA athletes, Olympians and Paralympians. We have had millions of kids learn what we call the athlete mindset, which is goal setting and perseverance and, overcoming failure. And the organization works with, again, like schools and school districts across the country and across Canada as well. So, we are always looking to expand our Buffalo Bills programming for schools that, want to learn again, how do you set a goal? How do you persevere? How do you, like, I think if there's anything when you and I were kids, if there's anything we learned from the Buffalo Bills, it was how to persevere through failure. I think they taught us that. When I did my Hall of Fame speech, Jim Kelly was there, and maybe I think Andre was there as well. And I thanked them. I was like, look, guys, I don't mean to be whatever, but when I watched them lose and the city continued to love them, or when they came back from the first Super Bowl and the whole city started chanting Scott Norwood's name, Scott, 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 in the middle of downtown, remember, with tens of thousands of people. Here's this like 12-year-old kid that learned, oh man, you can try and fail really badly and people will still love you. That's kind of cool. Like, that was a really neat thing to learn at 11 years old for somebody who wound up going to 2 Olympics and losing and failing and still kept coming back for more. And, I think that's what, Classroom Champions has really been about. And I think that's where my Buffalo roots, and my sister and I, our Buffalo roots kind of show through in Classroom Champions, is we want kids to learn that, and, through the mentorship and through relationships and through supporting schools and their what's called social emotional learning in schools and their framework. So yeah, you can go to classroomchampions.org to learn more.
Very cool. Yeah. Moms, dads, if you're watching, certainly. Educators, certainly. Bills
Absolutely.
fans, certainly. Lastly, no, 2 last things. Sorry.
Okay.
When the Sabres are in Calgary, do you go to the games?
I do. My Sabres jersey is upstairs. I've been here, close to 20 years. I am a Flames fan, except for when the Sabres come.
Very good.
Yeah.
What Sabre jersey do you have?
Oh, I just got a generic one.
Oh, okay. That's good, because the name has changed so frequently anyway, right? So
yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
And of course,
and I'm cheap, so
And you're probably as heartbroken as everybody is here about the Bills. And, yeah.
Are we ready to talk about it? I mean, it did feel good to watch. I wasn't sure how I would feel about the KC Cincinnati game. Like, I was sitting outside at a friend's house yesterday watching it, and I didn't know how I would feel about it until Kansas City messed up once, and then I realized, no, I want to watch. I do want to watch them lose.
I'll tell you what, I was so happy for Cincinnati. I really was, because I didn't want Kansas City to go back for a 3rd year in a row, because they would have jeopardized potentially our 4 years in a row going to the Super Bowl. Granted, they had won one of them, but and the other thing is just the way we lost, and to see it happen to them, and everyone's making a big deal about the coin toss, and the coin toss is a terrible rule, and this and the other thing, and I maintain, listen, you lose the coin toss, it is what it is. Go and make a play. And guess what happened? The Bengals made a play, and I was like, yeah,
that was awesome.
Man, if the Bills could have done that.
And we wind up, I like, my sister and I Zoom every game, almost every game, and certainly the last month and a half of the season together, and just put the computer on the laptop on the couch, and we watch the game. And honestly, the Bills, through their support of Classroom Champions, and they supported me when I was an athlete too. It is a first class, Gretchen Geithner, Michelle Roberts, and the team over there, it's a first class organization who cares about the city. And I think that also is why all of us kind of just persevered through almost 20 years worth of failure, of the drought to and that's, I think I explained to my friends here, I'm like, look, we've earned this. It is to watch Josh Allen and to see somebody who to have somebody who we have the faith like we did in Jim back in the day. We've been through some stuff to get back to a point where we want the ball in our quarterback's hands with a minute left and 2 minutes left, and so it's fun, and it's just their time will come. And those guys, I thought coaches comments in the press conference were incredible. He just owned it. That's what I want to see. I want to see our coach. Who knows if it was supposed to be a pooch kick? Who knows? But the fact of the matter is, he wasn't blaming anybody in that press conference, and I thought that was first class on his part. And Classroom Champions is actually doing, one of our partners is this Education for Persistence and Innovation Center at Columbia's Teachers College in New York City, one of the top 10 education and teaching institutes in the world. And they study, the researcher we work with there, Xiaodao Lin Siegler, she studies failure. So she literally studies how elite level athletes, from myself to NBA players to Nobel laureates, how they handle failure and how that helps in their life. And she, as soon as that game happened, she messaged, she was like, I want to interview Josh. I want to interview Coach. So I've got stuff to go out to the guys this week for her. And I think that's neat. I think that's a neat thing that sports can give. is that. And I think that's like, it would be nice if our Bills could teach us how to feel when we win, but it is a familiar feeling for all of us where we are right now.
Yeah, for sure. I'm assuming you're going to watch as much of the Olympics as you can.
My wife is due with our second child on like the Saturday after opening, like in like a week or two. I should know that, but it's a week or two. So my plan is to, like, I get to sit there with a newborn baby and just watch the Olympics. I'm so excited.
What a good
two amazing things happening absolutely. At the same time.
And lastly, anybody you want to say hello to back home here?
Oh, I mean, I want to say hello to Mark and Sandy and Willie and Colette. And I want to thank Mark and Sandy just did a sizable donation to Classroom Champions, and it's going to support Western New York programs, which is really, really amazing. So those are two couples that I grew up with that are, like, in essence, our extended family and our extended parents there. So those are the folks that I would really want to say hi to, plus all my folks at City Honors and the great work that's being done over there.
And the Snowman.
And of course, my boy Dion and Reed and Tyler. Like, how cool would that have been when we were kids, right? To have, like, the kids get messages every month from the players. They do Zooms with the players. Like, that would have just been, that was, like, in essence what Lee and I wanted to create, was something we would have thought was cool when we were 10.
I've taken up way too much of your time. You're so kind to allow me to catch back up with you, obviously with the Olympics happening shortly in China. So I appreciate you doing this. Classroomchampions.org, folks. Watch that, get into it, maybe make a donation. And if your school doesn't subscribe to it, figure out a way how they can.
Reach out to us.
Yeah,
we got room. We're starting to get everything ready for next year for all the schools. And go Team USA, watch it. I mean, everything starts on NBC on Thursday, I think, actually. Opening ceremonies on Friday. So enjoy the games.
Good luck with the baby too.
Thank you.
Great to see you, brother. Thanks again.
Great to see you.